Well, friends, we are going to discuss about the idealistic concept of curriculum planning, at the same time the idealistic views regarding the nature of curriculum and the way which is to be followed for the construction of curriculum. We are discussing about Western philosophy. On the idealism is one of the most important branches of Western philosophy. And we have discussed the basic concept of idealism, and thenceforth the principles of idealism have also been discussed in earlier classes. Now here in this class, the views of the idealist or the idealist philosophers relating to curriculum or relating to the process of transaction of curriculum we are to discuss here today. Well, let us come back. This is curriculum according to idealism. It means what should be the nature of curriculum, what types of contents are to be included in the curriculum of various levels of education. According to the philosophy of idealism we are to discuss here, curriculum as per the explanations of the Western philosophy, means the branch of Western philosophy, that is idealism, very simply means the systematically prepared documents which include the subject and different contents of the subject of a school course or a college course or a university course, or in a sense higher course of higher level of learning. At the time of preparation of curriculum, demands of life and society are systematically scrutinized and contents of different subjects are selected. Means what we are to do when or at the time or what type of principles we are to follow at the time of selecting various subject contents for the preparation of curriculum. According to idealism we are to discuss here. Let us see the next one. Some specific principles are to be followed or are followed. According to such principles, subjects and contents are selected. Means from the standpoint of idealism, some specific principles are followed for the construction of curriculum, means for planning curriculum, for constructing curriculum, or for designing curriculum. And those principles are being placed here by following the idealistic philosophical viewpoints. Such principles depend on the existing philosophical trend of social life. Means by negating the social demand, we never can help the process of education function so much well, or help our learners learn according to or learn to satisfy the demand of the society. So friends, philosophical parameters are very much important, and philosophical parameters are the necessary precondition for consideration at the time of selecting various contents of curriculum for various levels of education. Idealism favors, means what we are to do at the time of selecting contents or planning for curriculum, designing curriculum according to the principles of idealism. Idealism favors the principles such as, these are the principles which are to be followed at the time of curriculum construction from the standpoint of the idealistic school of philosophy. Number A, curriculum is to be constructed or framed according to the demands of eternal values of life. Means idealism emphasizes on eternal values, means at the time of consideration for inclusion of various subject matters in the curriculum, eternal values are to be well kept in mind or considered important. The value principle has special importance from the standpoint of idealistic school of philosophy, and that's why the curriculum designers, the curriculum planners are to consider the existing value status of life and society for selecting various contents for the inclusion in the curriculum of different levels of education. Let us see. Number 2, demands of individual human life are to be well considered and subjects and contents are to be selected. Means the demand of life as well as demand of society are to be considered so much well, and subjects are to be selected, contents of subjects are to be selected for inclusion in the curriculum. Number 3, demands of human society are to be well considered and subjects and contents are to be selected. According to idealism, construction of various levels of education. According to idealism, curriculum of various levels of education should include different subjects and contents of religious studies, spiritual values or spiritual studies, ethics, languages, sociology, literature, geography, history, music, fine arts, environmental studies, laws, horticulture, etc. So these are the most important parameters on which special emphasis is to be given at the time of selecting subject contents for the curriculum of various levels of education from the standpoint of the Western philosophy of idealism. Let us see the next one. Idealism and methods of teaching. Now, friends, what should be the methods or what methods are to be followed by the teachers for the transaction of all the included contents of curriculum to the learners? What methods are to be followed? Let us see. Teaching as the idealist, you see essays, or as per the assessment of the idealist, teaching is an important activity in the formal process of education. Means the idealists consider teaching as one of the most important activity of the formal process of education. Without teaching, learning is impossible to take place. For learning, teaching has special importance. To spread the ideals of idealism in the process of education, methods of education are to be different. Means various methods or different methods are to be followed just to translate the contents of the curriculums which have been selected considering the spirit and principles of idealistic school of philosophy. Let us see what are those. Followers of the philosophy of idealism and the educationists who support the principles of idealism have put special importance on the following methods of teaching. These are the methods which are to be followed for the transaction of information, for the dissemination of knowledge in the classroom situation, which are included in the curriculum. But these methods are being supported, or these methods are to be followed from the standpoint of the philosophical views, particularly from the standpoint of the idealistic school of philosophy. Number 1, idealists do not favor any specific method or methods of teaching. They are very much open. Methods of teaching should be selected according to the demand of situation of life. Let us see. Idealists advocate, number 2, idealists advocate different methods according to diverse situational demands. Means they are very much, flexible, not rigid. Methods of teaching should be selected and, if need be, developed according to the nature of teaching contents and situation of learning of the learners. Idealist emphasizes on, this should be emphasized, not emphasizes. Idealists emphasize on the creation of new methods to teach students according to the demands of teaching learning environments. Idealists basically favor creativity of the teachers for creating new methods so that the contents of the curriculum, they can very easily translate to the students. Knowledge is very successfully disseminated to the students or to the learners, And that's why idealists are very much flexible at the time of consideration for the selection of teaching methods or methodologies by the teachers. Thus, instead of being missed, this part has link with the earlier point. Thus, instead of being slave of any particular method, for idealism, teachers should be the creators of new methods for the satisfaction of the changing demands of life and society. Here also flexibility is being noticed. Next point is teaching methods. This part has link with the earlier point, which is being discussed in the earlier slide, so please keep in mind. Next point is teaching methods according to idealism should be, so they are now to some extent specific in prescribing some of the methods. Most of the idealists have expressed views, you see, in favor of 100% flexibility at the time of following or selecting to follow different methods for the transaction of information, for the dissemination of knowledge, depending on the subject contents of curriculum. Still, they are to some extent, means the idealist or the school of the idealist or the idealistic school of philosophy has some specification concerning to the methods of teaching which we can or the teachers can follow. Number one, that is questioning method can be followed. Question answer procedure or method can be followed. Conversation method can be followed. Dialogue is very much important. If you go back to the Greek history of education, you will find, particularly in the concept, in the spirit and principles of the three great Greek philosophers, that is Aristotle, Plato and Socrates. They are considered as to be the sophists of the ancient Greek society, who basically followed dialogue to exchange views, to transact information. And that is why the Western philosophers, particularly from the standpoint of idealism, has favored the teachers to follow or depend on dialogue as teaching methodology or method. Discussion is one of the important methods which is being favored by the idealistic school of philosophy. Lecture method is being, you see, favored. They have prescribed, the idealists have prescribed lecture method. Argumentation can be one of the most important methods for the transaction of information or for dissemination of knowledge. Then interaction can be one of the most important methods. Then group discussion, which is very much important or which has specific importance for developing public speaking skill too. So friends, idealistic, from the standpoint of idealism, you see, at the time of considering teaching methods, teachers have authority and autonomy. They have favored or they are in favor of flexibility as approach, you see, for selecting various types of teaching methods. Still, in the last point, we have come to know that this school of philosophy, particularly or specifically the idealistic school of Western philosophy, means the idealists have favored, you see, as teaching important teaching methods, all these questioning, question answer, conversation, dialogue, discussion, lecture method, argumentation procedure, interaction method, group discussion, etc. So, if it is asked to mention about some of the methods of teaching according to idealism or the idealistic school of Western philosophy, then you can mention about all these teaching methods which basically idealism favors. Thank you so much.